Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving deep into a really fascinating devotional source, Rhapsody of Realities by Pastor Chris. It's focused entirely on effective spiritual practice.
Specifically, it lays out a detailed methodology for communicating with God.
Right, in a way that it claims generates real promised results.
That's the core of it. Our mission, really, is to analyze these highly specific claims about achieving what the source actually calls a productive life.
A productive life, okay.
And it's not just sort of vague spiritual guidance. It gives you a step-by-step practical approach to prayer. And it promises access to, well, tangible dynamic power for anyone who applies it correctly.
And the whole thing hinges on this distinction, which apparently comes from the Apostle Paul originally, between two modes of engaging with God. It's the difference between praying with the Spirit and praying with the understanding. And we're going to look at why this source argues superior and what that superiority supposedly unlocks for you.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. So the source kicks things off by pointing us to the core text. It's 1 Corinthians 14, verses 14 and 15. This is where Paul apparently separates these two methods really clearly. He writes, "For if I pray in an unknown tongue, my spirit prayeth, but my understanding is unfruitful."
Unfruitful, that's a key word there.
Yes. And then he asks, what is it then? I will pray with the Spirit, and I will pray with the understanding also. So he acknowledges both.
He does. But what's really crucial is how this source interprets those verses, the specific definitions it draws out. So that first mode, praying with the understanding, is presented as, the standard intellectual approach.
I'm like using your mind.
Exactly. Praying through your conscious mind, using language you fully get. You know what you're asking for. You know why you're asking. It's all cognitive.
Okay, standard prayer as most probably think of it.
Pretty much. But then there's the second mode, praying with the Spirit.
Or, as the source calls it sometimes, praying in other tongues or tongues of the Spirit.
Right. And this is presented as a totally different mechanism.
Yeah, this is where it starts to get distinct.
Yeah.
And maybe where the tension you mentioned comes in.
Absolutely. The tension is baked right into Paul's description. When you pray this way, in the Spirit, your spirit is doing the praying.
Okay.
But your understanding is unfruitful. Your mind, your intellect, it's not grasping the content.
So it's like a bypass.
A purposeful cognitive bypass. That's a good way to put it.
That really is a point of friction, isn't it? If the whole goal is effectiveness, getting real results in your life, how does the source justify pushing for a method where your conscious mind is essentially, out of the loop?
It justifies it by saying this spiritual mode has preeminence.
Preeminence, okay.
Yeah. The source flat out asserts that even though the mind is unfruitful, praying in the Spirit takes preeminence over the intellectual way because it's seen as facilitating this direct communication and activation of the Spirit itself.
And that's presented as the pathway to power.
That's the idea. The thinking is your spirit knows God's perfect will, even if your conscious mind doesn't have a clue at that moment.
Okay, so if that spiritual mode, praying in tongues, is positioned as the top tier, most effective method.
Right.
What does the source say about how often you should be doing it? Does it move from just defining it to demanding it?
It absolutely does. That leads us straight to the mandate as the source presents it. It points you directly to Ephesians 6.18. The instruction there is to be praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit.
Praying always.
Always. And the source highlights this not just as, a good idea, but as a mandatory thing. One of the sure ways to pray effectively.
Praying always.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty continuous, or at least very frequent. It suggests this isn't just for, emergency situations. It's meant to be woven into your daily life.
Exactly. Almost like the background processing of a successful spiritual life, according to this source.
And why? Why the constant application? What's the payoff?
The payoff is the tremendous power that's promised as the result. This is where it's really interesting. The source brings in James 5.16, specifically the Amplified Classic Version, the AMPC, to describe this.
Okay.
And the quote they really hang their hat on is, "The earnest, heartfelt, continued prayer of a righteous man makes tremendous power available, dynamic in its working."
Tremendous power available. That's a huge claim.
It is.
Definitely needs unpacking. Who exactly qualifies? Who is this righteous man that gets access to this dynamic power?
Yeah, the source is very specific about that, which is important for the logic.
It's conditional then.
It is. The righteous man in this context is defined as someone who is already born again. Their standing isn't based on their own actions. but it's the righteousness of Jesus Christ. It's positional, not practical perfection.
Right, so it's about your status in Christ, not about being personally flawless day to day.
Precisely.
Okay, so let me see if I'm following the logic here.
Yeah.
The source says, your position, your righteousness in Christ, gives you access to this power. But the power only gets activated, only becomes available and dynamic through the mechanism of praying constantly in the Spirit.
You got it. It creates this seamless link, doesn't it, between who you are spiritually and what you can do practically.
A direct connection, identity to effectiveness.
Which means, if you buy into this material, the ability to generate these amazing results is supposedly already inside you.
If you use the right method.
If you engage the correct spiritual communication method, yes. But here's the big pivot the source makes. If this power is available to everyone who is righteous, why don't more people, experience these results? Why isn't everyone seeing this tremendous power?
Okay. This must be where the source really doubles down on its main point.
It does.
It has to explain the gap between the promise and the perceived reality for many.
Yeah.
So why don't people see this power working? What's the answer?
And the source gives one very direct answer. It's unequivocal. It states that prayers often aren't effective simply because they don't pray in tongues.
Wow. Okay. So it's not just preeminent. It's essentially non-negotiable for power.
That's how it's framed. The whole mechanism activating this dynamic working is tied directly, inescapably, to praying in the Spirit.
That definitely shifts it from just being, one tool in the toolbox to being the essential requirement for getting real results, as they put it.
Absolutely. It becomes the engine.
And what's fascinating is how they describe the energy it generates. It sounds almost physical.
It does. The language gets quite vivid here. The source details these powerful effects, saying praying in tongues generates a lot of firepower.
Firepower.
Really?
Lots the term used. It's presented as this raw energy source that you generate through the practice.
And this firepower, it's not just for feeling spiritually charged up inside. It has an external purpose.
Correct. According to the source, that's precisely its function to make tangible changes in the world around the person praying. It specifically says this firepower subdues the works and forces of evil.
Subdues them.
Yeah, among other things, it calls transcendent benefits. So this is how the source explains the utility of praying without your understanding. It argues it bypasses your mental limits to directly target and dismantle spiritual opposition out there.
Okay, but wait. If your understanding is unfruitful, how do you aim this firepower?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah. How does the source explain the discernment needed to apply this power effectively, say, towards a specific problem at work or something happening in your city? The source doesn't explicitly detail that aiming process in the sections we reviewed. It sort of implies, I think, either that the discernment comes after you've generated the charge, or maybe that the Spirit, which is doing the actual praying, already knows the perfect target.
So the act of praying in tongues is about generating the force, not necessarily directing it with your conscious mind at that moment.
That seems to be the idea. It separates the power generation phase from the strategic application phase, maybe? The focus here is definitely on generation through tongues.
It connects the discipline, the consistent practice, directly to accessing and eventually applying this power in the real world.
Yes.
And the promise isn't just for your own private spiritual life. The source is quite clear about the scope, isn't it, where these results should show up.
Oh, absolutely. It frames the impact as potentially far-reaching, way beyond just you. The results are explicitly promised to be evident, to be seen in your home, in your place of work, in your city, in your country, and around the world.
Wow. So it's presented as a mechanism for initiating change on potentially a global scale.
Starting with the individual's consistent practice, that's the link.
So what does this all mean when you boil it all down?
Well, if we synthesize the core argument of this particular devotional source, it says the path to a truly productive life, the way to access this tremendous dynamic power, runs straight through prioritizing prayer in the Spirit.
Meaning praying in tongues.
Meaning praying in tongues, yes. Prioritizing that over just praying with your understanding. It's presented as the primary, the most effective communication method if you're a Christian seeking tangible results, across the board in life.
It definitely lays out a complete and frankly pretty demanding methodology.
It does.
But the most intriguing part for me, and maybe the thing we should leave our listeners thinking about, is that core paradox we hit on right at the start. The whole system is built on the idea that the greatest effectiveness, the generation of this immense measurable power,
Yeah.
happens precisely when your understanding is unfruitful.
Right. It requires, or at least advocates for, purposefully bypassing the conscious, rational mind to get a higher, more dynamic outcome.
Which leaves you with a really interesting question based purely on this source material. What does it actually mean for knowledge or value or power to be generated and applied successfully?
When the conscious mind is deliberately sidelined.
Exactly. If your mind isn't actively figuring out the specifics, yet the results are promised to be potentially global and targeted, well, it asks you to think about a powerful mechanism that seems to operate completely outside our normal cognitive oversight.
It's something to definitely mull over as you consider, the different sources of power and influence you encounter.
For more information on how you can grow spiritually using Rhapsody of Realities, please visit our website, www.rhapsodyofrealities.org, or you can also visit rin.rhapsodyofrealities.org/salvation. Thank you.